foot to take off. Maybe a little here and here, and all this distortion.
Would that be considered a running heel?
Oh yeah, but he's a thoroughbred.
They are like that.
Okay. Let me look at this horse. Take this horse's foot and just shape the shoe up and kind of get it nailed up and clean everything up around it. But what you're looking at is if you got these distortions, it's really easy for a guy to. Is this your finish rasp or is this one?
Yeah.
What we do a lot of times is we'll take these feet and we'll just clean up the top of them like this, like we do, and we don't really ever move them back. But this horse here, we're just gonna have to show him for what he is today, because he doesn't, everything, this horse's foot's really in good shape from here down, from all the way around here. From here down to where it goes south. And so, he's got a little bit of heel length that he needs to have taken off. And I'm gonna try to back this toe up and just get some shape. And then we're gonna map his foot out. And you'll see this horse is a lot like that one that we saw in the video. Now, a lot of people say you can't rasp on the dorsal wall, you're gonna wreck their wall and all that. But, I mean, if you look at this horse's foot today, our job is to get this horse in a better place. And if we just leave the junk on there, then he's not gonna really be a lot different. And you know, maybe we can't do everything we need to do today on it. And so, and I'm not against, it doesn't really bother me. I've really never seen a horse, other than it looking really bad and taking some time for his foot to get back organized. Yeah, you can over rasp their wall. I've done it. But really, for the most part, we've got to get their foot gathered back up somehow. And the only way you can do it is by backing it up with your rasp. You can nail a shoe on it and leave that junk sticking out there, and then you chase it for a year.
I think his length is leverage, right? So you leave that.
I agree.
And distortion on there is just gonna.
I think you can get too crazy, like where the collarbone lays. Like the flare starts where the collarbone is, right there. I think if you overdress here,
That just tells me how much more foot that I have back here. But anywhere from an inch, three quarters of an inch to an inch is generally going to be where the widest point is your foot is back from the true apex of the frog. And you're going to have the biggest deviation you're going to have usually is about, the biggest deviation you're going to have is going to be about a eighth of an inch difference in if you find the true tip of the frog. You're going to have, you know, it could be an eighth of an inch difference, quarter of an inch difference. We're pretty close right there. Now then, from there, the widest point of his foot, if you can't find the tip of his frog, right here at the top of that ridge, you can see where that kind of has a curve in it. The top of that ridge, that's Duckett's Bridge. So if you can find that top of that ridge, that's going to be the widest point of his foot. An inch forward of that, pretty much is going to be the true tip of his frog. And where they say an inch and 3/4 forward of that is about where the distal end of the coffin bone is going to be in his foot. And they say theoretically a quarter of an inch forward of that is where breakover is supposed to occur. Now here's where we get in trouble. That's where you see a lot of shoes that are set back to that point, because they say, well, that's breakover, so that's where the edge of the shoe's got to be. That's not where the edge of the shoe needs to be. That's too far back. You can't move it. You can move it back that far, but it's not right. That's where I would put the enrollment phase of the ground surface of my shoe if I wanted to put the mechanics in it. I'd put the mechanics in that place, not the leading edge of my shoe. Does that make sense? Because his foot's still got to be protected. And so So if you're gonna do any breakover, and any kind of breakover, unless it's a really severe case where you have to actually, where you have too much foot you can't get moved back, then I want to, that's where I want the enrollment phase of my shoe, whether it's a rocker toe, a roll toe, a square toe, or whatever, that's where I want that to be. And now then, I can go down through the center of my foot and divide it in two parts. And then from there, I take an equal distance across here to the back of his heel. Same over here. I want to try to keep these lines parallel with one another. And then where these lines cross and meet, that's about the amount of stop that's going to be sufficient. I'm not going to be I'm not going to touch it. Even if I could do this with my nippers, I think it's too much room for air there, so I'm not going to. And if you look at the bars in a horse's foot, of course I've got this one, I already rasped on this one, but the bar that's bent the most, whichever bar is bent the most, what does that side do? Is that the longer or the shorter side? The longer side. The more your bar bent, the more that's up forward or rolled under. So does that give you some crazy aha moment? No, but it's something to look at. It's another thing to look at to say, hey, this horse looks like he's crushing right here. His foot doesn't look too bad, but you look at his bar, and that bar will be real bent. The other one will be more, it may still be bent, but it won't be bent as much. The bar that's bent the most is the one that's generally the longest. So we're going to take this foot. We're gonna just cold bang this one out. We're gonna cold bang this one out. Nail it on. Then we're gonna do the other side. Well, matter of fact, this one's the one I think I need to get some guys, and we're all gonna shape the shoe for this foot. Now then, these thoroughbreds, to me, this horse, for a thoroughbred kind of foot, this horse has got a pretty good thoroughbred foot as far as his heels go. They're not just, they're still rolled under, and they're not ideal for what we like, but they're pretty stout. Let me just clean this up just a little bit, just so I have my commissures and my frog cleaned out. And I wanna, and me personally, I'm gonna straighten my bars up. I'm gonna keep my bars straight. And I'm just gonna really wire brush his foot real good. And this is the way I do. If this horse was at my shop at home, I would do him just like this. I'm not trying to do something different today. I'm not wire brushing him today because I'm here. That's how I would do it. So, a little bit high on this outside. And this is a practice. I mean, all of us, it's not easy to get every horse's foot perfectly flat every single time. I mean, that's what we shoot for, but we're all human. Could use this horse actually could probably use a little medial lateral help on his heels because they want to run in so much. But there's a fine line there where you have distortion. I mean, where you have a leverage versus protection. And I don't do a lot of thoroughbred feet like this. And so when you're looking at these kind of feet, it's really hard for me to, with his heels the way they are, you still have to think about putting his foot in the right spot, because the heel is just part of his foot. You still got the toe, you still got the quarter, you still got his frog, you still have all of those other components. What we want him to do is we want him to put his foot on the ground and the heel not take all of the force and the toe not take all the force. We want the whole foot to be able to bear the weight. And a horse like this is not going to be too hard to manage if a person will just stay within reason. He's got this busted out spot right here. I haven't really taken a lot off. I've just moved his heels back. So because most feet don't distort. These thoroughbreds they do, but most feet distort from there forward. And so I can move that heel back to where I want it. That's also where the bars terminate. But see right here, on this horse's foot in the back, here's the bridge of his foot back here. And his foot and his frog is a lot further forward than 1 inch. This horse's frog is it's 1.5 inches forward. It's 1.5 inches forward than the widest point of his foot. And so when I look at this horse's foot from the top, all of these lines right here, it looks like his foot's squared away, but all of these lines right here are where his foot's inching forward. And all of these lines are stress lines from his foot going forward. And so if you go right here, about 1/2 inch below his coronary band, that's where the base of his coronary groove is. So if you start right here, it's thin, and it widens out, and it gets the widest point right here. So from there down, that's how thick his hoof wall. That's where his hoof wall starts getting thick. So from that point down, the whole 1.75 inch theory out the window on this back foot, because that's going to say this horse's coffin bone is going to be about right here, which it's going to be pretty close. I think it's still going to be within a 1/8 of an inch difference, which is pretty much what they found on a lot of these research that they've done. And you go 1/4 inch forward to that, that's where they say breakover is going to be, if you're going to say breakover. So you can see how much distortion we have there.
Do you count this as distortion too, where you see the stretching of the lamina? With that,
the distortion really comes in the distortion's actually here. The distortion actually comes in the width of the lamina, because that's where it pulls away from, right? So the distortion is in the lamina region. The hoof wall, you can actually see by your measurements how far forward it's run. So, and then once you get everything cleaned up, you can kind of tell right here, find the widest point of his foot. When you run your hoof knife or your hoof pick, where that hump is right there, that's the widest point of his foot. That's usually where the bars terminate. And if you can find that, it gives you a real good indication of how far forward your foot is. Can everybody see that? And this horse has got a big foot. So I want to show you. But if you look at this shoe, and you look at my mark right here, where the inside web of my shoe is, that gives me a pretty good indication that I'm in the right spot for my hoof mapping. That makes sense? And I've got his toe. I'm going to pull his toe back just a little bit more because he's got that little notch right there. I'm going to burn my clip in. But that's another thing we talk about is leverage versus support versus, I didn't really help that one very much. But leverage versus support, and what is too much length and not enough. Really, a horse's foot, it just needs to be covered up. It really doesn't have to have a bunch of extra length. You just need to cover up what's there. This horse could probably stand a little more length behind on top. I want my foot to be on top of my shoe. I don't want my shoe to be underneath his foot. I just missed this outside heel enough to bother me. And you know, there's a lot of, and if you're doing your certification or you're doing the journeyman run, you don't want to be nailing nails back behind the widest point of the foot. That's just part of the test. But, you know, I'll be honest with you, at home, I'm not afraid to nail a heel nail in if they need it. And a lot of the feet we work on are pretty healthy, pretty strong, and so they can handle it and say, well, maybe he can't. But if he's got that strong a foot, he doesn't have to have 6 nails. But what they do